Hello and welcome to day 3 of week 33 of our journey through Acts. And today we're going to begin Acts 26. Our goal is to read through all of Acts 26 in the next 3 days. And so we're going to try to do 11 verses today. I suspect if you're watching this, we've succeeded by God's grace. So basically, Paul is now in front of Herod Agrippa, and Herod Agrippa II, the son of Herod Agrippa I, whose intestines exploded in chapter 12. And so Paul's now going to be allowed to make a defense before him, although his fate is already sealed. He's already appealed to Caesar. So this is all moot. This is all icing on the cake or poop on the cake, depending on how it turns out. It seems to be pretty positive in the book of Acts, so it's icing. But verse 1, and Agrippa to Paul said, this is, I think, the aorist of Phiemi. So this is kind of a form that you might want to learn because it often appears in narrative. He said, he's going to tell. Okay, so Agrippa said to Paul, quote, "It is allowed for you," this is a present passive indicative, third singular. "It is allowed for you on behalf of yourself to speak, to be speaking," present active infinitive. This is the reflexive pronoun. Autos with a se on front is the second person singular reflexive pronoun. Then Paul, having stretched out his hand, makes his defense. So this is apologeo, apology. You can hear apology, which apologetics, defending. He's going to make his judicial defense here. Middle, Luke loves middles. He himself defends. He began. Actually, this is imperfect, isn't it? Because it has an augment. Present stem with an augment is imperfect. This is probably a inceptive imperfect, because I can hear the words, he began to defend himself. Actually, we might take it as reflexive. He began to defend himself. The middle can have that meaning, reflexive meaning, defend himself. And began comes from the fact that it's imperfect. So we can get a lot of kind of intermediate Greek mileage out of this one word here. It's imperfect. It's an inceptive imperfect. He began to. It's a middle. It's a reflexive middle. He began to defend himself. Okay, verse 2. So now he's going to quote Paul. "Concerning all the things of which I am accused by the Jews, O King Agrippa." So this is present passive. I am accused. Present passive indicative, first singular. I have considered it, hegeomai. I am considering it. I'm considering myself. This is hegeomai. Omai is deponent. It is imperfect, isn't it? Because it's omai. Hegeomai. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Hegeomai. Yep. I have considered myself, maybe it's perfect, actually. I think it's perfect. Because hegeomai, and a crash into oo. And so it would be hegumai if it was present. So I think what's happened here is this lengthening, that this has been lengthened, that this is the perfect reduplication, and that the ending has been shoved right on the stem, and the epsilon has lengthened to an eta. And so this is perfect middle or passive in form, but deponent in meaning. I have considered myself. Okay, wow. Sorry to waver there a little bit in my parsing, but I'm pretty sure that if you look in interlinearbible.org, it will tell you that this is a perfect middle or passive participle deponent. It doesn't tell you deponent. First person singular. Okay, I have considered myself blessed. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed, Makarios. I have considered myself blessed by you about today to defend myself. Another probably reflexive middle, present middle infinitive, reflexive middle. To defend myself, being about to defend myself today in front of you, upon you. Okay, verse 3. Especially you being knowledgeable. So the you here, why is it accusative? It's a good question. It probably could just as well be genitive. There are some who argue for an accusative absolute. This would be possibly a candidate, although I didn't look it up. You being especially knowledgeable of all the things according to the Jews. Participle present, participle of me. Both of the customs and the issues of debate. Okay, Agrippa is a Jew, so he would. Okay, therefore, I am asking patiently to hear me. Hear me patiently. This is sigma alpha is aorist. I tells me it's infinitive, aorist active infinitive from akuo. Therefore, I'm asking you patiently to hear me. Something like that. I guess, yeah, I suppose the you here, but this is too far. This is in a different sentence. So still a little puzzled as to why that set is accusative. Okay, moving on. Therefore, the way of life of me. Now, this is accusative, so it's the object. I don't get the verb until down here. So to help you get a sense of the grammar, the sense here is all the Jews know. All the Jews know, therefore, my way of life, the way of life from my youth, the way of life from the beginning having come to be. So we put it all in our Greek computer, and it comes out, all the Jews know my way of life from my youth, from the beginning. Something like that, having become from that was from the beginning. But this is all a mess of tacking stuff onto way of life. What way of life are we talking about here? Why, the from the youth way of life and the having come to be from the beginning way of life among the nation, I think probably is the sense here, among the nation of Israel, both in Jerusalem, maybe even in Jerusalem. All the Jews know. The word order, of course, puts the emphasis on way of life. It's first. You can do this in Greek because the ending tells you how it's functioning grammatically. My way of life. All the Jews. This form is interesting. I had to look it up because it's very unusual. In fact, this is the only place in the New Testament where this particular form, isasi, is used. And what it is, it's a third-person plural form of oida, to know. But the normal form in Koine Greek, that is in New Testament Greek, the normal form would be oidasi. And so I had a hunch, and I went to my classical Greek grammar, one of them, and I see that this would appear to be the classical Greek form. And so, again, this is a hypothesis. It's an educated hypothesis, but I have a feeling that Luke is making Paul sound sophisticated here. In fact, this might not be a perfect illustration, but it's kind of like Paul using King James. All the Jews knoweth, actually that's not the way it would be. I don't actually, the third person plural, I don't know what the third person, it'd be like, thou knowest. All the Jews know, they knoweth, knoweth is a singular, he knoweth, not they knoweth. So it's a little off, but to try to give you a sense of it's a little archaic is what I'm saying. This is an archaic form, in my opinion. Every Jew knoweth my way of life. You know, it sounds sophisticated. That's an imperfect example, but this is an unusual form. It's perfect in form, active in meaning. That's normal for oida, but it's a third person plural. And I believe it's an archaic form. So Luke is making Paul sound very eloquent here. Of course, Paul may have been very eloquent. I'm not saying he wasn't, but again, please don't try to chop my head off. It was perfectly acceptable for ancient history writings to paraphrase and to improvise on speeches. That's par for the course. There's no lying, there's no cheating, there's no dishonesty in doing that. If you think that, then you can't get out of your own cultural head. That's modern culture that might think something like that. It was perfectly acceptable for ancient historians to paraphrase speeches and such. Okay, verse 5. Having known me for a long time. So I'm a known quantity here. These people know me. People know my background. They know my history. This is present because the GIN. a present active participle. My aunt is an active participle. Present active participle, nominative masculine plural. Knowing ahead of time me for a long time, if they want to witness. So this is a conditional clause, a third-class condition. This is the if. And of course, this is a subjunctive because on takes the subjunctive. Subjunctive is coming. Subjunctive is coming. On expects a subjunctive. So this is a present active subjunctive, third person plural. If they want to witness, it's typical to have witnesses at a trial. Craig Keener adduces some examples from classical Greek of invoking the audience of your trial as your own witnesses. Knowing that, according to the most strict sect of our worship, of our religion, of our way of worship, I lived as a Pharisee. So this is a superlative adjective. So you have 3 degrees of adjective. You have the positive degree, which is the normal accurate. And then you have the comparative degree, let me not say accurate, strict. And then you have the comparative degree, stricter. And then you have the superlative degree, strictest. So this tata, the tata, is in the case of, there are 2 ways to make a superlative adjective. One is with the st, actually like in English, biggest, but the other one is tetos, and so this is the tetos superlative. According to the strictest sect of our religion, of our worship, I talk a little bit about not being anachronistic in our sense of religion in the podcast, and I also talk about in the podcast about how I take strictest here in an informal sense, in one of the strictest, because I think technically the Essenes were probably stricter than the Pharisees, at least some Essenes, not all, but some of them. I lived, sigma alpha tells me aorist, right? There's the augment, zao. I lived as a Pharisee. And we know that. We know this about Paul. Verse 6. And now, upon the hope of the promise, notice how the towards our father's promise. Which promise are you talking about? The towards our father's promise. And now, for the hope of the promise to our fathers, the promise having come to be by God, I have stood accused, being condemned, being judged. Boy, he's using some eloquent Greek here, isn't he? This is gen, so it's the aorist participle of ginomai. It's aorist middle participle. Men are passive participles or middle participles, and its deponent. And it would have a theta eta if it was aorist passive, so it's the aorist middle. Genitive feminine singular to match this. Article never lies. See the similar, ace. By God, agency, hupa with the genitive. I have stood being condemned. This is a complementary use of the participle here, present passive participle, being judged. I have stood being judged. It's kind of goes along with the verb here. It's not exactly a periphrastic, because that would be with the to be verb. It's complementary, though. It's the predicative use of a participle. Okay, a lot of lingo there. This is the perfect of histemi, to stand. I have stood. I stand accused today for the hope that was made by God of the promise to our fathers. So why are you on my case? Unto which promise, or unto which hope, maybe hope, because hope was singular. Unto which hope the 12 tribes of us hope to meet it in earnestness, both night and day, worshiping. Why is it that the 12 tribes continue to go to the temple worshiping night and day, over and over and again, for years and years and years and years and years? Israel has worshiped, the 12 tribes have worshiped God in earnestness, waiting for the redemption of Israel, as we see in Simeon's song, and some of the songs at the beginning of Luke. Israel is waiting for its redemption. The 12 tribes are waiting. We have this hope. Night and day we've been worshiping the Lord in earnestness, and that's why I'm on trial. I'm not some departure from Israel. It's for the hope of Israel that I'm on trial today. concerning which hope I am accused by the Jews, O king, vocative, of basileus, present passive. I am accused by the Jews, agency, hupothegenitive. Verse 8, why am I considered unfaithful or faithless by you all if God raises the dead? Question mark. So this is the interrogative pronoun. Present passive, I am judged by you all, faithless, apistos. If, this is a first class condition. So the other class, third class condition we had was the if. This is the if that assumes it's true. If God raises the dead, yes, he does. Paul is assuming that Paul raises the dead. Yes, he's assuming the truth of that statement. If God raises the dead, God does raise the dead. It's not an if. It's not an iffy if. God does raise the dead. Why am I being judged if it's true? You could say, if it's true that God raises the dead, why am I being judged as faithless? Verse 9, therefore now he's going to flash back to the pre-Christian Paul. Therefore on the one hand, I considered it to be necessary to do many hostile things by myself against the name of Jesus the Nazarene. I'm not quite sure what to do with this. This is another reflexive pronoun, autos, with a M on the front. I therefore considered to myself against the name of Jesus the Nazarene it to be necessary to practice many hostile things. Anyway, we kind of get a sense here of it, although I'm not entirely sure where to put to myself or for myself. By myself, could be by myself. Day is present infinitive. This is a aorist infinitive of proso. Xi is the key to hidden sigma, so I have a hidden sigma alpha, aorist, alpha iota, infinitive. So to practice many hostile things. Again, there's no time element to the aorist outside the indicative mood. So this is an aorist infinitive, and it just means to practice. Okay, to practice many hostile things. No connotation of kind of action. It's undefined action in the aorist. Verse 10, which many things which also I did in Jerusalem. Which here probably refers to many hostile things, and it's okay to switch from the plural, neuter plural alpha, bingo, to the singular here. Which also I did, sigma alpha, is aorist, active indicative of poieo. Okay, and even I closed into prison. I imprisoned in prison. I imprisoned in jail many of the saints. Of course, he's using Christian lingo here of believers here. Certainly Agrippa and Festus wouldn't consider them to be holy ones. I myself, unnecessary grammatically, but puts emphasis. Imprisoned, sigma alpha is aorist, katakleo. Okay, and this is the accusative, the object of it. I imprisoned many of the saints. I myself did in jails, plural. Having received, so this is a participle. It's lobbing you in aorist active participle. Having received the authority from the chief priests. From the chief priest's authority having received. Okay, and trying to kill them. Let me remind myself here of a second of what anairumenon is. I think it's trying to kill them. I cast my vote. Okay, maybe condemning them to death might be the sense here. Condemning them to death, I cast my vote. This is the perfect of kataphero. Eninka is the perfect of pharaoh. So it's a perfect active indicative first singular. Now, I talk a little bit about whether this is literal or figurative in the podcast. I think figurative. I don't think Paul was literally on the Sanhedrin, although he could have been. I'm not too opposed to it. This is a present middle participle from anaireo, to condemn to death. Verse 11, and according to all the synagogues, so he went from synagogue to synagogue, often punishing them, I was compelling them to blaspheme. This is probably what's called a conative imperfect. Is that right? I tried, or a voluntative imperfect. No, it's not a voluntative. It's a conative imperfect. I was trying to compel them to blaspheme. Not that they did, but that was what he was trying to do. That's another possible nuance of the imperfect tense. This is just a present participle. Okay. And exceedingly being enraged. So this is a present deponent from emino, being almost out of my mind. Mino has a connotation of being a little bit loopy there. Being exceedingly, against them, I was pursuing them until and into the cities outside, foreign cities. He's talking about Damascus. I was really, I wanted to get these people. So he was pursuing them, imperfect of dioko, pursuing them to foreign cities. Well, okay. Some interesting Greek here. A little difficult, but not beyond your reach. And so we continue tomorrow, where Paul will tell about his conversion to the Jesus movement and to Jesus in Damascus.